we have here one of the originals, one of the people that has brought hip-hop in new directions and light as it moved across the coasts and around the world with Good Life and Project Blowed Roots into some of the early moments of popping and locking and dancing and elements that came in. This is also somebody that I heard somebody once say, like, don't go on after her. If you're going live, she's a career killer. And was anybody out there on Friday night that saw the Queen perform? Yo. And so with the breadth of knowledge and the wisdom, and I'll let you share, I don't want to take too much of people's thunder, but founder and pioneer of so much that we hold dear in the culture. So thank you for joining us, Medusa, the gangster goddess. Yes, and next to her we have Defy, a brother that's going to represent another element of the continuum. And interestingly, there's a theme that goes throughout this too. And when I move on to Emile YX, there's a piece that he's brought about the connection of the string between cultures that we root from and places that we're going. And man, was watching you on the come up. And as an artist that still in many respects is emerging and moving into your blow up moments in the world that uses the power of words, hip hop, and MCing to gather people around community. We have a dope MC and someone who's continuing that thread from multiple directions. Defy, and people in the house, please let's keep it going and give them their flowers, at least in this way. Thank you for being here, brother. And Emile YX on the end. There's a couple people that been walking around. It's like, who's that brother over there? I was like, look, you ever think that you're a good person doing good things in this world? Shut up. You know, this man has made me feel so humbled in the work that he's done in the world, and also important to note in terms of legacy and who you're standing in front of. This is one of the originators of the oldest still active hip-hop groups, the oldest hip-hop group in South Africa, but arguably same thing with breaking and the B-boy and B-girl crew with Black Noise. He's an author. You might see him in documentaries. He's a grade school teacher still. No. By trade, right? He taught a little grade school. He wrote a few books. He helped people put out and create their magazines. He's built institutions around the work that he's done and has used hip-hop. Man, I've heard stories of hip-hop while apartheid was in effect in South Africa. And now that we're sitting in this world where we're combating apartheids in their modern forms, this is very significant. And hip-hop as a tool to combat one of the most violent and oppressive regimes and institutions that we know, and also performed at Nelson Mandela's inauguration, correct, to put that into context. On the side, we have Emile YX. I've only scratched the surface, but yeah, no, thanks. I'm sorry, man. Yeah, that's a nice, humble face, but allow me to offer you that bouquet. So, all of that said, I'm going to crack the laptop, but I told them all, partly what we're going to do, we're going to get technical and see how we can use these tools to move around and organize, and as tools of facilitation and education, which you all do. But also, there's a little bit of magic and mysticism that comes into the word, right? We have let there be light, right? This is some of the people's oldest myths and traditions come from the idea that light in the universe was spoken into being. There's religions that refer to God as the word or the solar word, right? The Quran is the recitation, yes. And I wanted to first, before I start to ask you all individual questions, go down the line in means of your own introduction, and wondering if you could speak to that little bit of mysticism and the idea of how you speak things into existence and what that means to being an MC in the continuum of hip-hop history. Queen first, please.
Was that for me?
Yes.
Okay,
yes,
wonderful.
Yes, if you don't mind. Yeah.
What's interesting about that is, we are just forms walking on this earth, and without the light in us, without this soul and this spirit moving it, it's just some flesh box, you know. So for me, the mysticism is staying connected with the universe and knowing that anything you give, it is a reflection of, and it will give back in the same way. So I'm very mindful when I'm writing my rhymes, when I'm executing a show in front of youth, in front of all the different cultures. It's necessary to take a stance for the universe. And once you give that righteous, mystic light while you're engaged in the universe, it should glow the whole room. Everyone should be on fire when you give in that way, from that thought process. And I think that's why I love what I do, because it makes me connect to the higher source, the higher power, and have a higher resonation with my life and my light.
The five, which man, you want to speak on that too? Thank you.
Just want to big up Medusa first. Actually, is one of my favorite MCs. Shout out to Project Blowed. And she's right. I think really being open to the light and channeling the light, paying attention to your dreams, following that too. For me, I think even just having a deja vu, for instance, and coming up in this physical realm, and you finally realizing that this deja vu is about to happen before it happens, and then something happens indicating you're going to have to show up, whether it be on the dance floor or through a page or through a battle, and you know it happens. But then after that moment, you realize that there is some mysticism involved, and it could be a spiritual journey too as well, and beyond what's happening in just the regular physical state. So I think for me, following this one deja vu, led me to this open mic, and that's when I kind of rediscovered my artistic voice as an MC and started to really take it more seriously. I just want to give a big ups to my dad too. He transcended a few days ago, and my man Desi Mundo is outside. He threw him up on the wall, and he said he just had a deja vu, and he was rocking the piece. He's like, why the heck am I painting this dude's name's Larry on the wall? And then he just looked to the left and he realized I think that mystic moment happened there for him too. And I think some of these things in life are the way they are, just all meant to be. I don't know, maybe not, but I feel like there's definitely some mysticism in channeling, manifesting what's real. And I think I got inspired for MCs like Medusa. When I was a kid, just going way back, my best friend Wake and I, our first show that we were able to be brought into, we were ushered in through a kind lady who paid the doorman a couple $100 just so we could just come in. We weren't 21 yet, but lo and behold, we walk inside and we see Percy P, we see Medusa, we see Micah 9, and we see Fat Lib, we see a lot of these dope artists and icons we grew up following and just learning from, as not only as MCs, but just also the message too. And like, for me, that was just like everything to me. And just to see Medusa rip this MC apart who tried to interrupt her set midway. She invited him on stage, gracefully though, and she just bodied him on stage. And that taught me and Wake's self, like from that point on, that's how you rock. And that's how you make it happen. So, I don't know, I can't add too much more without going in depth on the story, but shout out to the dreamers out there, all the mystics, people, whatever religion, but for us it's hip-hop, and we just give thanks for being blessed to be part of the culture.
Yeah, thank you, brother. Yeah, man. Man, Emile, how would you?
Yeah, I'm essentially a b-boy at heart. Like I believe that we think and we do. You know, they say in the beginning was the word, but it's not true. In the beginning is the thought. First you think it, then you say it. You know? And so in the dance world, we think and then we do. And so when I finally grabbed the mic, I was like, I'm going to say some shit I'm not going to do. You know, so which makes it difficult as well, because you're held accountable by those in your community that what you speak manifests, you know. And the other thing I want to say about light is that they know that we are people of the light. And so they always throw a fake light in the middle of the circle. And everybody wants to be in that fake light. But the power is the circle, not where the light shines. And I use this example. If I'll expose how old I am by saying, don't look into the light, Catalan. Because the light they throw is for the extraction of the power of the circle. Like the people have the power, not the person. The person is famous because of the people. And hip-hop has forgotten that, you know. And so, like, I challenge the idea that the light that they shine is our light. It is fake light, you know. And I'll leave it at that.
I'm wondering, Emile, if you don't mind, while you're on it still, to maybe set the stage for the rest of the conversation, if you could share, this is, by the way, this is where a lot of this is brilliantly written and shared in your most recent book, right, Reconnecting the String. Can you, I don't know, it's been a couple weeks or so I don't know, you might have 7 more books by now, but could you explain what reconnecting the string means? And I think that'll kind of feed where we're going.
Yeah, there's a Tram person from my community, from South Africa. On our coat of arms, there's the Tram language that says "Tri Ikara, united in our diversity," you know. And this language doesn't exist any longer because the people have been completely genocidally destroyed in Southern Africa. And so, but this language lived on, you know, and they asked him, why does he look so sad? And he said that we've broken the string. And when I was reading the poem, it is really like a lament of how humanity has disconnected itself from its original path. And in this First Peoples expression, they do this jacking of their body where they go around in a circle. They call it reel. And so while people are like clapping their hands and, you know, in the circle around the fire, they pull down, and they are pulling down this connection, the string, the ropes to God, they call it, because they believe they dance with ancestors in order to go into trance, you know. And he was saying that we've forgotten how to dance with ancestors, and we've forgotten how to be bare feet and connect to the ground, and you know, and so this book is about how do we reconnect this culture who's been oppressed by the same force. It's born out of oppression, like in the South Bronx, right? But those people didn't have nothing. They brought all of who we've always been with them, and they manifested it in that space. And often it's spoken as if they made something from nothing, insulting them because they don't come from nothing. They come from everything. And it's a very Eurocentric white perspective that makes people believe that you can discover shit which is not actually discovered. It is from way before your understanding of the lineage, you know what I mean? So Reconnect the String is an attempt to try and show people the connection of the circle. We've always made circles since the beginning of time. The DJ is the cycle, is the hey 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 is who we always. It is a loop. It is a break. It's who we've always been. The writing on the rock is so-called aerosol art graffiti. You know, the MC is the storyteller. Like all of these elements is who we've always been. We just been disconnected from understanding that link. There's in Zulu, they say sawubona. And sawubona is we see you. So I am who I was, who I am, and who I'm going to be. I don't come alone. None of us come alone. And so, anyway, so that's the idea of the understanding in my attempt in the book is to draw parallels between hip-hop culture and our ancestry.
Yeah, and thank you. And I, yeah, there was a couple. Yeah, there was a couple truths in there. Yeah, absolutely. And one thing I love about that way that you approach this too, it's not the string is broken, it's the reconnection, right? That we're beginning from. And so, in that grain, we talk a lot about the grandiose and the granular, right? And the granular. So, the broader concept into the fine tuning of how we reconnect the string. And I thought maybe a place to circle that back around to as we get into like facilitation and education and community action in that respect is what seems to be one of the most foundational ways of passing on anything is family, right? And I was always struck by something in your life, Medusa, about you have a musical lineage, right? You have an auntie that was a member of the Undisputed Truth. Smile in your face, you know. And I heard you told a story one time about writing your first song shortly following you being invited. And what struck me is she invited you, and I don't want to tell the story for you, but and then your family was like, yeah, go with. But could you tell about that act of like that story of going on that tour, how it came about, and what it meant to you?
Actually, it made me who I am, without a doubt. She did sing with the Undisputed Truth. They were touring with the Jackson 5. I'm 7 years old at this time. And I got the biggest, Michael Jackson is my cardboard boyfriend. You know what I mean? So when she came and asked my mom, can I take her on this run up the West Coast? My mom said yes, and I was just thrilled because I'd already been in the studio with her. I saw that magic. I saw the connection of this group take her to another level of being. And at 7, to witness that, it was everything. So we are up the coast. This group only had one hit, Smiling Faces, and it was brand new. So every night I would see them get on that stage and be completely unknown to this audience. And by the time they get to their 4th song, Here Comes Smiling Faces, they're already turned out. It was the goodness of the music and how they connected with each other on that stage that got them open. And then Smiling Faces hit and they realized who they were. And I thought it was amazing because they could have started with Smiling Faces, but they're like, I'm going to test this energy. And to see that and them run off the stage sweating and laughing and pick me up and run me back to this, I was like, I want to be this. I want to feel that energy. The exchange between them and the audience was everything. So we get back to LA and I said, I'm going to write a song. My uncle, who is 2 years older than me, y'all know how that works. Anyway, he has a little electric guitar. He starts playing a little lick. We come up with some licks with that. I took a Trick or Treat, the head. They put the candy in. I turned it upside down. I'm playing the bongos on it. 7, playing the bongos, and we come up with this rhythm. And I wrote this hook called Angel in the Sky. And my auntie came home. And she was like, where's Nene and Troy? She's going to take us out, and walked in, and we were like, we want to play this song. We want to play it. So we played the song for her, and she was like, wow, you guys did that. She started singing it with us, and she added this wonderful thing to it. And later on in life, I'm like 11, and I hear the song on KJLH. Angel, you're like an angel in the sky. I was like, I'm sitting there with my grandfather and my mom, and this comes on the radio, and it just filled my whole spirit with the joy that I continue to latch on to an experience when there is not that spirit around. It makes me, it recreates me every time. But that blessing, she passed away like 10 years ago. I was emotional when this brother shared that his dad had passed because my great aunt just passed. And every time someone passes, it sends you down the rabbit hole of all the people that you miss and that have influenced you in your life. So I really felt you, and I understood that. And I found that you can take all of what they've given you and the world and add it to who you are and your spirit, and let them live through you. And all the gifts they give, you give it back. And sometimes those are the things that keep me the strongest at what I'm doing. I know it seems emotional, but it's just an emotional thing when you decide to take on that responsibility to let them live through you. So I appreciate that connection with the ancestors. And I'm still doing this. I still love this. This is my passion work. But I couldn't do it without the energy that they instilled in me and that I keep pulling from. So absolutely, absolutely.
We don't come alone.
No, not in the least little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Man, Defy. I wonder, man, I want to go to, I know, man, it's so much, but I'm wondering if, like, I don't know, in the light of where we're sitting and the nature of this discussion, this family share, maybe even just on a broader sense in terms of how that continuum and family, you must be thinking heavily about this right now, but how, like, in the traditions and what's handed down from your community where you're coming out here from, and we said how that idea of intergenerational exchange comes in, and what's floating in your mind around that right now.
My brother here said some really amazing words. I think it really rings true. Like, hip hop definitely started in the BX or maybe here and there in New York. But we definitely have our ancestry that was existing even before colonization. So, like, I really resonate with what he said about, like, the drummer being like the DJ back in the day, and there was ceremonies happening way before, anybody came to Turtle Island. And so, like, I kind of see us MCs as being modern day storytellers, just passing along what we learned from our Che's and Masanes, our grandmas, grandfathers, and people who came before us, so we can keep it going, whatever culture that he or she's from. So, but together through hip hop today, it's a blessing that we can actually combine all these cultures together, culminate something amazing and beautiful that helps save a lot of lives, even mine, and I think so too. Kind of think of, like, the style writers as being like modern day sand painters too, in a lot of ways. And
Can you
just like
tell them what sand painters is too?
Well, it's almost like Tibetan monks when they create sand paintings too, a little bit, but it's a little differently. But it's all done around a circle. It goes back to the circle, and it's all it's transformative. It's healing. It's a lot of beauty into it. So, like, and when I see, like, dancers dance, to me they're like kind of walking in beauty, and that's kind of one of the words or phrases that we're supposed to live by as Diné people. When I think about my family and being interconnected through generations, like, we come from a matrilineal culture. So when I introduce myself first, and that's why I love hip hop too, because I believe it is a matrilineal culture. We got to look up to the queens and those who raised us, our moms, and just also from Mother Earth. And so, like, all this in mind, like, when I was born in this place called Deneta, like, we believe we're surrounded by 4 sacred mountains. We introduce ourselves with these 4 clans. Our first is our mothers. And, I started to see this beautiful parallel between my cultural side and then hip-hop, too. Because, hip-hop has 4 main elements to it. And so, like, for me, I think there's a beautiful connection there I just wanted to add to, like, what our brother here was talking about. And I think, like, it's definitely spoken and shown through our families today. I just want to shout out to the pioneers, though, and definitely recognize where we're at today. And the root of hip-hop from New York actually stretches all the way to the desert, too. A lot of people don't realize a lot of styles and people moved from New York to New Mexico and Albuquerque a long time ago and made their way and brought their styles and innovations, too, as well. So, and then the West Coast, I got to give respect to Project Blow. I'm actually considered by some OGs to be part of that tree. So for me, like it means everything to me as an MC to come from that kind of cloth, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, man. Emile, following those up, I just wanted to ask, like, this is generally your perspective on this, but like, many of those things I listed and many more, like your work outside, you know what I mean, in the communities, and for people that you contact around the world. One of the things I first noted, like upon first meeting you and learning about your life, is your strength as a father, and I'm just wondering how you would kind of like speak to, in terms of your larger revolution and what you are here to do and what you're doing on the world. How does being a father in your household play into that?
Yeah. Firstly, never say never. I was like, I'm never having kids. Never say never. And that was because I work with a lot of young people, and but I believe in listening to ancestral voices, and so I dreamt about my daughter 15 years before she came. Her name is Mina, and so I've always, like, my younger sister is named Rene, and I named her because of a dream. Right? I dreamt her name into existence. And so for me, like, I shouldn't never have told my wife that story. she kept at it. But what I'm saying is, like, I think the main thing about, like, our work in the community is often we don't connect it to ourselves. You know, it's like something separate from us. And so with my kids, I was holding my son in my arms, and I was about to sing Ashabai Baby. About to. I was like, what the hell are you doing? It's like colonial crap you're gonna sing your son. And I made it my duty to, every song that I sing my kids is not their songs. So the first voice they heard and story they heard is the stories I came up with. And so like about 10 to 15 lullabies that I wrote well, I can't call it writing because I was just like making it up as I go along. They don't care. But now at night, they insist I sing them to sleep. So no matter where I am in the world, they'll call, and and they don't care that my singing voice sucks, but it's cool. They're my kids. And so I think that as primary teachers, we don't realize the power we have to bring about this change, this revolutionary change, this decolonization that everyone speaks about. It's actually rehumanization. I don't like using their colonization as the bigger word. You just add D to it. So the rehumanization requires us to tell our stories. And so I found these First Nation stories of the Bushmen that I told my kids. And when they were older, they were like, how come there's no pictures? Like, you got all these other books here, like, where, you know? And so that forced me to illustrate those books. And then they got older, and they got all these other toys, like, where's these dolls? Do you know what I mean? So it forced me to manifest, like, the doll, the illustrated book, and even animation. So there's an animation about the creation story of the Bushmen, because my kid, learning alongside my kids, forced me to manifest these things. And so now the project that we have in 15 schools, we share these stories with other kids. So at least over 1,000 kids, and they take that home, so their parents are like, oh damn, now I gotta make up a song because of that dude. Or I gotta, you know, so it forces our community to think about our real power and not wait for them to change. They're not going to change. This is their nature. You know, their nature is to do what they've done, and they've always done it. And so we expect change, whether it be First Nation in South Africa or First Nation here. Like, we know that we can't trust them, you know, but yet we're waiting. Please, like, it's not going to happen, you know. So being a father has forced me to bring about those. And being a b-boy, and before I go any further, like, I wanted to be like Kenny. Like Ken Swift, like he's my idol. So having him here, like it inspired me to like look. I never thought I'd ever meet you, by the way. Like this is, you know, but like to see what they were doing from this illusion of nothing. And then for me to be in South Africa and be like, damn, I can try that. And like, you know, but they're on screen, so I can constantly reference, occasionally go back and be like, yo, I want to learn that. Even before there was slow motion, right? Like fast forward and rewind to get the, you know. But like, so I'm learning that, because I learned from people like that, at a time like that, that I'm also learning from my kids. You know what I mean? And that they are my teacher as well. Like again, the circle is process of it's circular learning, essentially. And I spoke a lot, sorry, I hope that made sense.
That's really beautiful. Yeah, I asked you that question framed in a way of like essentially what you do for your children, but that cyclical nature of how that turned into what your children do for you, also by you learning from them, but also there's a have to, right? That's inside of that too, when they're looking for those toys and looking for those lullabies that turn the heat up on what you got to do in the world too. And yeah, it's a powerful thing that having children or being attached to people in the young of the community and that continuum could be. Yeah, thank you. Also, look out for Emile will be putting out 7 lullaby albums by 2025. Pretty sure. Hey, now moving back in a little bit closer to that granular, right, and the how and the what we're doing in the practical sense. I want to maybe touch on some of the things that you all are doing, have done. Defy, one of the things that I think is super dope about the way that you approach your work with the world and the larger picture, the bigger than self aspect to how you approach music, is the intertribal gatherings piece that you do, and the idea of like creating a space that brings people together. And I know you have something to speak on this as well, all of you, of course. But yeah, can you kind of like talk about that project, what it is, and why you do it?
Yeah, so every year at the last weekend of April, there's this huge gathering that happens. It's a powwow event, and it brings all nations together, and it's probably one of the hugest events for Albuquerque, New Mexico, besides the Balloon Fiesta. Anyway, Albuquerque is surrounded by 19 Pueblo villages there. They're very similar but different, and we gather there to celebrate life together. There's a lot of dances. It's a competition too, a lot of prize money too for people who are into dancing in that type of style. You'd be surprised how much money you could win too. And what's cool about it too is they actually give money to the drummers. So like imagine going to a jam and the DJ gets paid like 5 or 10 racks too, just as much as the artists or the dancers who win the battles. I think that's dope. But anyway, every year with this huge gathering of all these nations coming together, there's also a lot of MCs, there's a lot of dancers, there's a lot of writers, there's a lot of DJs who come into town and they just want something to do. So we started to come up with the idea of putting this event called a Gathering of MCs, and it comes out of respect from places like Project Blow, Good Life Cafe, and it's really dope because hundreds of MCs come out, and it's a big event. Happens every year. It's the 13th or 14th. It would have been the 15th annual, but pandemic or whatever. But it's amazing. So anybody's welcome to come through. There's a beat battle, MC battle, competition showcase. We've had a lot of people from world rap champions to the Blodians to people from all over the world come through, and it's a dope event. So shout out to the MCs who out here too. Shout out to my man Chasm. We got to bring more people from the Northwest to the Southwest and bridge this connection, I think. So thanks for bringing that up, though.
Yeah.
It's a dope event.
Thanks. There's some dope MCs on those too. And those are online in your music catalog and everything like that too.
Oh, yeah, that's actually a series, right? I forgot to mention that. We're working on a series now. It started out too. Shout out to DJ K Slay, with the 50 MCs to 100 MCs, like ciphers with the videos. I thought that's super amazing. Like, showcases and lineups of dope MCs like that. I miss that, and I think it's dope to have MCs paired up. Some people kind of think like cypher tracks or posse joints are kind of going out of phase, but I think they're coming right back too, and it just shows like more MCs on one track. To me, it's like seeing like one train with the whole crew end to end, and I miss that kind of vibe.
Yeah, it is. It's mad refreshing, and some dope MCs on there too. So that's something. And when everybody goes back and does their homework, if you're not already hip to these, you can get into Fi's catalog for that. Thanks, man. Medusa, maybe we could touch on the good life for a little bit in terms of a gathering space too that birthed something amazing for folks that know to relive it and folks that may not. Like, could you just kind of like tell what that cafe and also some of the values of nonviolence or like the other aspects that, turn it to you.
Yeah, the Good Life Cafe is something that I got introduced to after being in jail for a minute. And when I got out, first off, while I was in, I realized that the majority of the women that were in there for prostitution, drugs, or prostituting to get their drugs, and these were some beautiful spirits that just happened to be in the wrong place and doing the wrong thing with the wrong group of people. And I promised myself when I got out that I would represent women like that. I would do this for them. And one of the first places I went, I got picked up by my cousin when I got out, and we went straight to a studio. On the way home from that studio, we passed down Crenshaw, about to pass Exposition. Looked to our right, happened to be a Thursday night, and there was the Good Life Cafe. And you talk about a gang of heads outside, everybody, it looked like there was a fight, might have been a problem. We were like, what's going on? A lot of sisters out there, though, and it was just a unique, eclectic vibe. So we pulled over like, well, what is this? Busting. Every cipher, they're just killing it. I'm like, oh, this is where God put me. To ride down Crenshaw on a Thursday after getting out of jail and getting introduced to this vibe naturally. And I was like, okay, this is a part of my movement. If I'm going to make a change and stand up for these sisters and who I am and who my elders taught me to be, I have to come and do it right here. As I realized, they were like, okay, these are the rules. You can't cuss. It's like, you guys don't cuss in there? Wow. Yeah, and it's a health food spot. It's like it's a health food spot. So I ended up coming back to the Good Life Cafe for a few reasons. One, to learn about how to eat better. So that was the beginning of my vegetarianism. They taught me that in this realm of hip-hop. To get together as a collective and the men and women respect each other equally was phenomenal. To test your mental limit as a youngster to not cuss as you spit a freestyle, that's hard for me right now. Because my greats love to cuss and they did it well. So, as a youngster, you'd leave as soon as they weren't in your face. You were trying to cuss like they were, and say it exactly, you know what I mean?
It was a mental exercise.
It was thorough exercise. And I realized that these are my people. This is a small cafe. We packed in there. It probably held 75 people. 150 people would push up in there and be bleeding outside, So to be introduced to such magic from the youth, and this one sister, B. Hall, elder, was running the whole thing. 3 elders out of 150 youngsters wanting to do what they want to do, but step in there and have the respect for the space and the elders that are in there to do it exactly the way they ask. That meant everything to me. And from there, it put me on a path of this is what I'm supposed to do. My lineage. I'm a black woman. First I'm God energy, then I'm a sister. And then I'm with this family that comes from the 40s, the 20s, been in LA since the 20s. There is a certain thing that they expect from you, a certain way of acting, a certain way of dressing when you go to the airport as a woman of color, as someone of color. So that brought that back to me, to my heart and my spirit. And I mean, I can't say enough. The Good Life Cafe helped spark so many right things in my life. So yeah, it's those places are necessary, especially for the youth.
Yeah, that power of gathering,
Man.
right? And setting those, and gathering
And
gathering
value.
around values, right?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. I'd never heard that story before. That when that came into your life is so powerful. The way things could be delivered like that, huh?
Absolutely.
Wow. Emile, ready?
No, I was just thinking about something you mentioned. When you mentioned B-Wall, I was actually in 94. I think it was Zulu Nation 20th anniversary. I was in New York and I was like visiting all my pen pals. And B-Wall had invited me to come to California. Wow. And by the time I got to, I think it was Missouri or something, like somewhere, I ran out of money to make the trip to California. So just you mentioning the name, I was like, oh man, damn.
Wow.
Sorry.
By the way, these waters are for you all too, if you want to think. Emile, maybe parlaying that in. I was wondering if, like, adding to this history that we're sharing it today, if you could kind of like tell us a little bit of the story of Heal the Hood and that project, how it came to be, what it means, what the healing is. Yeah, can you just tell the story, please?
So because of, having this background, as I said, as a b-boy, is like made it difficult when our crew started emceeing to actually just MC without there being like some sort of action, and so a lot of the work they were doing was already in the anti-apartheid movement at that point, and that community demands that you don't just, like, same way you're saying there's no cussing. Like, you're going to an ANC gathering with all these elders, and you're like, you don't want to cuss because they kick your ass, And then, like, years later, holding ourselves accountable to that. It's like, how do you, and I studied to be a school teacher. I taught for 3 years, and I'm like, peace out. I'm not teaching this white supremacy crap to these kids. And then, like, internalizing, like, we speak about knowledge of self, but, like, how do you internalize knowledge of self? How do you make it part of your life, And so when I left teaching, I was like, how do I start getting more kids involved in hip-hop culture because of what it did for me? So I started teaching b-boying because it's the easiest thing, right? You don't even need a slippery floor, right? You just need a space, right? And like initially, like hundreds of kids like fell in love with it, right? And it just expanded. Like, the kids would teach their friends, and like thousands of kids all over. First, where I live in Cape Town, and then it started flourishing in the rest of the country. And so now we had a way in to go and host like little jams and competitions, but then show them the rest of the culture, And a lot of times it was like, and we were speaking earlier about like how sponsors see this. They're like, oh, because we made our own Adidas. We were like, well, copy what we saw on the movies, and they were like, yo, they bump into us, and they're like, you can't do that. You can't fake Adidas. Right? We're like, why? We couldn't find this cut anywhere else, right? This is how it's supposed to look. And then they give you free shit. But they're clever. They know you're getting free, but you advertising. You don't realize, this is not, you don't think like that as a kid, when we were younger. And so the culture just like blew up everywhere, and it allowed us to show the rest of the elements. But then we learned that the problem is that without knowledge of self, they just using emceeing, b-boying, all of the elements to hate. Do you know what I mean? It's not helping. It's just like, it's getting worse. And like, how do we heal? And hence, that's where Heal the Hood came about. Like, how do we change what we teach and how we teach? And maybe we shouldn't even start dancing until you first learn this. Like, who are you? What's your ancestry? Where are you from? You know, how do you make yourself more conscious and powerful? And who are you? You know, like ask young kids, like, are you African? They're like, oh, hell no, I'm South African. Like, what? You know, South is a direction? They're like, you know? And even the teachers, because then we started doing these, like, performances at schools where all the Africans raise your hands, and kids were like, oh, hell no. Like, it's so deeply ingrained. Like, even with Black Lives Matter, what country does black come from? You know? Like, people are so afraid of being African that they rather call them a color that they're not. Do you know what I mean? And it's a very, very clever and powerful way of taking people's heritage, again, like with hip-hop, and making it a specific point in time. Instead of like, yo, Africa is the cradle of humanity. The oldest DNA on the planet is from Africa. The first scientists, first mathematicians, first everything. The most languages are on the African continent because we birthed language. And people aren't willing to expand their mind beyond this like box, you know. And so we started, you know, obviously, during apartheid, you had to depend where you were able to say the shit, not get locked up. And my pen pals were the ones who sent me this information, right? Like photocopies, blacked out through whitewash, the ISIS papers, you know, the Browder files. Like, I had no idea because apartheid took that away. They removed, the same way that they're doing in Florida right now. I was like, yo, am I back in apartheid? Removing like the ancestry from people's information, you know? And so Heal the Hood is about putting that information back into the culture. With that, sometimes even the culture, like my older brother teaches golf. And like, facts with Whitey. Like, yeah, in the field, you go to a golf course and there's these black kids practicing and like kicking ass. But these black kids are actually conscious about their heritage. They know these like First Nation stories. They know their ancestry. And they're awkward, you know, when these kids are so confident. So for me, like that, like now we at a point where we purchase land. We're building our own center so that we don't have to beg them anymore, you know? And like it's not easy. You know, you got to sell whatever shit you can to make the money to put up that center. But they can't chase us away. You know, our thing is like this was born out of a culture where people were forced out of a community. This culture was born out of that. Imagine the power we have that this culture could purchase land back. Imagine all these rappers with their billions, they could buy back Africa. Fuck. Do you know what I'm saying? But they're still begging to be in the limelight. They still wanting to, they're like, yo, let me be in the light. You know? So that's, I mean, for me, again, it's like they all have all this money, but they're still not healed. You know, so how do you get to a point where you, kids, I mean, the kids that I'll end with this, but there's a group of boys that I taught because I could share my personal experience with them. So I taught them breaking, and they were with me for like 5 years initially. And then they left school and they couldn't find work. So I said, okay. They were like, yo, can you form a rap group? I was like, all right, cool. If that's what you want to do. But they b-boy and they make beats and they DJ, it's all the elements, right? And then I took them to like universities. They were like, yo, Emile, this is boring. Fuck. People are talking these big words. We don't like this shit. You know, and I said, just chill. Like I was with them every day, you know. So I used that example as the foundation for our organization, you know. And that they were able to then pass that knowledge to like now the guys are facilitators in our organization teaching the next generation. I mean, I'm not even there most of the time, so it's able to run itself because these guys are now taking the lead, you know. So for me, it's about how do you affect people's perception of self? How do you heal our minds? You know, and it's an ongoing process because we're all like really fucked up, from the information that we have. And it's an ongoing learning process. I speak a lot. Sorry for the long answer.
Yeah. No, I did ask you that in a very broad way. So yeah, thank you. Yeah, and for that work too. You sparked on a few things that we go in several different directions and talking about these institutions and the space that relates directly to good life and the intertribal gatherings and like holding space and physical space in that relationship. But as we kind of like round around to the time, I think maybe there's something that I think might be really valuable to kind of like hear you all speak to. And hearing the story of like kind of like denying and pushing, like not raising your hand and these things that information that's been given to the people and mechanisms that we create that, out of the sense of self-defense, right? And I'm wondering, also we're talking about the power of an MC as outward, right? And to your point of like the cyclical nature as in our children, I'm also thinking about that inward aspect. And in terms of, as you all as poets, I think one thing that's very profound is something you've been able to access. And I think we can probably all relate, and many people in this room, about environments that we've been in where the idea of like feeling represents vulnerability and vulnerability represents danger, right? And in terms of the impact and the most powerful aspects of your art as poets and vocalists, how that idea of allowing yourself to feel, like being hurt doesn't mean being fragile, right? And all other feelings, and that in its relationship to vulnerability as it relates to poetry. Could you all speak to your feelings on that? So starting with Queen, please.
What's interesting about that is really to be vulnerable in speaking is healing for self, So if I could get as open as I possibly can when I write, when I'm writing, I'm not writing with someone. I'm writing with who I am and my experiences, and it would be a sin and a shame for me not to share it fully. And that's where the vulnerability comes. As an MC, finding a way, how am I going to execute this bar where it spreads around the room and people can apply it to their life as well. So it's for me, and it turns out to be for you, but you're not going to get it unless I am that open and that vulnerable, It's interesting because I teach at Cal Arts too, and I realized that that's the first thing we had to deal with before getting in the class, allowing people to be themselves and to be completely open, because there was a lot of lies sitting in this construct of teaching, and they assumed being an MC or hip-hop was one thing, so we had to strip that away and let them be self. Like, tell me about who you are, your family, your household, because you're not rapping about that. You're rhyming like you come from down south and you live with the homies. And I know that's not where you're come from because I'm at Cal Arts and you live right around the corner. So we're going to have to strip that away and get down to who you are. And that's usually my first step in a class. Let's get down to who you are. Let's butt naked,
Same to Emile's point, who you are, right?
Absolutely. And it's interesting because once you strip all of that away, you're starting all over. You're a baby all over again. So now we have to build up based on who you are and you being okay and confident with that. So that's almost a semester in itself. You know what I'm saying?
A lifetime in some respects.
Absolutely. So, me gravitating towards this is because I knew that it would allow me to be my true self. Without hip hop, I would have had a hard time finding a space to be who I am thoroughly. And I'm many things. I am yin, I'm yang, and I do them both because that's exactly who I am. I'm in this scene and everybody was like, oh, she likes girls. No, I like everything. It's about the energy and the person. So now you have to strip that away. So there's a lot of butt naked before we get dressed. You know what I'm saying?
Hip hop truly is something that enhances, embraces, and celebrates multiplicity, right?
Absolutely.
Is it not? Beautiful.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you. Defy, you want to speak to the same topic?
Yeah, I think as MCs, we're definitely very weird. We're very vulnerable, but we have to be vulnerable in order to heal in a lot of ways. Like, probably my best songs that I've ever experienced just personally were probably just me being as vulnerable, being as true to myself as I could possibly be. And even if nobody else heard it, you know, it's still an amazing experience to be part of, I guess, being vulnerable in that moment. It's part of healing, so I think it's a huge part of MC, and sometimes we do sometimes want to be in the light, but it's a fake light. Remember that. So like the inner light comes from, I think, being vulnerable and like recognizing who you are, accepting who you are too, as your uniqueness, and running with that the best you can. And I think, like Medusa said, we all have our own unique experiences, so it's best to be who you are as an MC and be open to being vulnerable, so you can be able to heal too, and maybe make some dope tracks for people can relate to in some way, and also heal together. So.
Yeah. I like that the light got linked back into, and like the idea of external and internal light, and that cyclical nature, and that piece of like channeling those feelings to you, and that being a light is beautiful. Emile?
Yeah, I think the vulnerability also is about honesty, you know. And I spend more of my time out now organizing than b-boying or emceeing, you know. And so, like, to be honest about what you can deliver. I mean, I actually did put out a lullaby album and stuff. So, just because it's, again, the vulnerability allowed for me to do that. I didn't care that people were like, yo, he doesn't have a singing voice. I just put it out, you know. But because those because of the lessons and being open enough to be willing to learn that, you know. And then I think also to be, like, the vulnerability also allows honesty. Like with Black Noise and my own solo, I put out like 26 albums, right? And I just put it out. I don't care if it sells. Like, I probably have most of it at home that I printed up, hard copies. But it's like, when I look back at it, I'm like, yo, this is what I thought then, you know? And like, sometimes people actually come to me and they're like, you know, I heard your song. Like, there's a guy living in Cape Town because he heard one of the tracks about this freedom fighter that nobody ever spoke about. And then he came to South Africa to learn more. He's from Ireland, and he married a woman locally. So he's blaming me. I mean, anyway. But like, you don't never know who's going to hear the music, like who's going to hear the songs, and how it's going to impact, you know, people around you, you know. But like the songs that are really from the heart, actually, like you say, have the biggest impact. So without the vulnerability, it's superficial. It doesn't really, you know, allow people to examine their own, like your lived experience has so much value. And so much people hide, like you're saying, they don't want to get naked. They're hiding. They just like, talking about a lot of shit they don't know about. They just like fronting, you know. So I think that the honesty and connected to that vulnerability, like you can't be vulnerable unless you're really honest about and know who you are. Yeah.
And there's a risk too, isn't it? Right, like with honesty, or even putting out, like you said, your singing voice that you're coming into and putting and sharing, even in the share. A risk, and that's something to do there's a cost, right? Like there's a real transaction and giving a risk for something you want to achieve for yourself or outwardly. We're about at time, so I want to ask, maybe in closing for you all, one more question, even with that risk and that peace of mind. And I won't ask you to speak for anyone else, but for yourself. As an MC, as a human with a microphone in your hand, do you have a responsibility?
Oh yeah, please believe. It's probably the reason I chose Medusa, the gangster goddess. I have a responsibility to let these women know that you are more than just a queen. There is no crown, mama. There is goddess. You run your cipher. Everything that's within reach is you. It's yours. It's all, this is what I represent when I'm out here on my mic. I am trying to let them know the women birth it. It might take us 9 months to give birth. It also takes 9 months to give a righteous thought to a project. If you are the cipher that we come from, you remain that. And even if you don't have children, you are still it. So goddess your space. I gangster my position and keep my goddess-like integrity. That's the gangster goddess. So that's how I accept the responsibility of what I do, being a gangster goddess.
Thank you. That's a good one for the applause. Yeah. The 5, please.
I think at this point in my career as an MC, or just living as an MC every day, is like, I think now it's part of legacy. It's part of our responsibility as MCs to educate other MCs, the younger MCs, and just allow them to do research and learn about other dope MCs like Medusa, or like anybody who's dope, who's been here before, from the pioneers to where we're at now, so they can take it to the next level, the next step. And I think that's where I'm at. And personally, it's dope to represent, but I think it's definitely dope that we have to pass on all our teachings and what we learned through MCing to the younger generation. So there is definitely responsibility, I think, for any MC any MC. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah, man, and thank you for doing that work too.
Yeah, I mean, the responsibility is, again, to quote a First Nation thinking in South Africa, Ubuntu. A person is a person because of other people. Like, in the same way that Sawubona is we see you. And so I'm responsible. There's no doubt about it. You know, it's also why I said, even though I put out 26, I don't see myself as an MC, because I respect the craft and what it really takes. Like, I say some shit to irritate people on a beat, but I know what the craft is. I know the effort and the dissection of words that go into being an MC. So that's part of my responsibility, to make people aware of that, you know? And then to pass it on as well. Like, if you go onto a Hilderwood page, you'll see young MCs at school, like grade 4 or 5, or like, you know, they will know we share this information via rap. Like, I don't know, people still do recitation, but like back when I was growing up, you do this recitation, you remember for the rest of your damn life, and you wonder, why the fuck do I know this shit? But now these kids know the songs for the rest of their lives, and it's giving them information about their ancestry. So for me, like, because I grew up knowing this crap that I didn't need to know, like, I don't want them to learn that. So I give them this other stuff so it's my responsibility to make sure that the next generation doesn't have to do what I had to do. You know what I'm saying? So that for me is like, to take action on the responsibility. Yeah.
Take action. That's a perfect way to wrap it. And that's also a remarkably that's a high bar and an amazingly humble approach from someone that's put out 26 albums. Can everybody show some love if you consider Emile YX an MC? Make some noise if you consider Medusa the Gangster Goddess an MC. And make some noise if you consider Defy an MC. Yeah.